The Black Death killed between 30 and 60% of Europe's population between 1347 and 1353. It was the greatest demographic catastrophe in human history. And for the peasants who survived it, the years that followed were, economically, the best in centuries, because there weren't enough of them left to do the work. Before the plague, the feudal system of medieval Europe had kept most agricultural workers locked in a state of near slavery. Serfs were bound to the land of their lords, owed labor obligations, were prohibited from leaving without permission, and had essentially no recourse if their wages or conditions were unfair. The nobility controlled the land, and labor was abundant. There was always another peasant to replace a troublesome one. In 1347, the plague arrived in Sicily from Crimean ports, carried by fleas on rats aboard merchant ships. It swept north and west with terrifying speed, killing in some regions more than half the population within 2 years. Villages were depopulated. Farms went untended. Lords looked out across their estates and found that there was no one left to work them. Suddenly, labor was scarce. Peasants who survived could demand higher wages. They could move to find better conditions. If a lord was cruel or paid poorly, a serf could leave for a neighboring manor where the conditions were better, because that lord was also desperately short of workers. For the first time in centuries, the people who actually grew the food had negotiating power. The nobility fought back. In England, the Statute of Labourers of 1351 tried to freeze wages at pre-plague levels and prevent workers from demanding more. But the law was nearly impossible to enforce. Workers ignored it. Some fled to cities. Others simply extracted better terms and stayed. The English Peasants' Revolt of 1381, the French Jacquerie of 1358, and similar uprisings across Europe were partly products of this new consciousness, of people who had begun to understand their own economic value and were furious at attempts to suppress it. These revolts were crushed, sometimes brutally. But the underlying economic dynamics could not be reversed. Serfdom declined across much of Western Europe over the following century, replaced by tenant farming and eventually wage labor. Historians argue about the precise causation, but the broad shape is clear. The most catastrophic epidemic in European history accidentally produced some of the most significant gains in working people's economic power that the continent had ever seen. The same plague that emptied the villages eventually broke the system that had trapped their inhabitants. Catastrophe, in this case, was also a form of liberation.